Hello, everybody, and welcome to Powerful Stuff. I was just laughing with Tamar, who's my guest today before this, because we're like, powerful stuff goes corporate. I know we've been giving you guys a lot of spiritual stuff lately, so we're like, let's bring in the corporate. Let's ground it.
Bring in the money.
Bring in the money.
Just kidding.
But I love Tamar. We became friends in the pandemic. Shout out to our friend Chisholm, who introduced us. We love you, Chisholm, if you're listening. But Tamar and I have like deeply connected because I feel like both of us have had these like creative inspirations and aspirations that we've been kind of each other's sounding boards for through the past few years. And Tamar has, not only does she work at Netflix, but she also has a TikTok called Corporate Baddie, which is just like such a fun, accessible way of like your corporate BFF.
Yeah.
Like real talk, and Corporate Baddie has gone to, well, you have gone to Amsterdam and lived abroad for a year and come back. And so I wanted to have you on the pod because I just really admire like your go-getter attitude as somebody who just like takes big swings and goes for it. Like starting the Corporate Baddie channel, which I think a lot of people are like, oh, should I start a TikTok or like, and they never do it because they're scared. And you just went for it. And like moving to Amsterdam for a year from LA and like just like taking these big swings. So I was like, I feel like this is going to be a good convo. You have like lots of nuggets of wisdom that I've personally been inspired by.
Thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be on your podcast, to be honest. Like I love just the concept of powerful stuff. And to your point, we did bond over some of those sort of more creative dreams that we had outside of our normal day-to-day, which is also important. And that makes up a big part of your life. You spend a lot of time doing your maybe 9-to-5 job or your entrepreneurship job, but then what is the creative that comes outside of that? And I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you about that over the past few years.
I love it. And I love that I would think it was at my wedding, like last people standing, last people standing in the cuddle puddle, which is just a platonic puddle of friends. And I was like, you should be on the pod.
Yes. I also learned what a cuddle puddle was at that wedding. And I was like, wow, Venice is very different from WeHo.
I know. It is a different world out here. It's a different world. And we're so glad. We were so honored for you to be our WeHo representative in the Venice cuddle puddle.
There were quite a few people from LA, but I think I was like one of two from WeHo.
Yeah.
I loved that.
I know. I love that. I know. And now I've got you back in Venice and I'm like, I'm not letting go. I lure you in with the podcast.
Happily here.
But yeah, to kind of touch on that, to give our listeners an initial snapshot of Corporate Baddie. We'll start there, and then we'll maybe from that, now that we're all feeling loose, feeling ready, we'll go into our 3 breaths from there. But before we do, can you kind of give the listeners a snapshot of the origin of Corporate Baddie? Where did Corporate Baddie come from? Like, what was that initial spark of like, I'm going to do this in addition to my corporate job?
You know what's interesting? It seems sometimes like there was a spark and I just all of a sudden started it. But in fact, I had that Corporate Baddie handle, I think since 2020.
Wow.
And I had posted a few things on it, but nothing really serious. And then I moved to Amsterdam in 2022, beginning of 2022.
I was so sad. I was like, just as, when you meet a like great friend and you're like, I know this is going to be great for you personally, but wait, we just connected.
I know. I felt that way with so many people that I had met in LA too, but I was like, don't worry, I'm going to come back. And I felt like, okay, this is a really cool way to start a little bit more of this account. I feel like it's a new beginning. And so for me, new beginnings give me so much like strength and excitement. And so it felt like I could do more with that account. But I had that account for a long time. And so I think it is funny that sometimes we see those markers of success or a video that goes viral and it's like, wow, like you just did that today, when in fact, like I had those thoughts for a year before I had really started posting.
Right. And so was it the move to Amsterdam where you're just like, it's time, I'm on a personal journey, I'm going to document it?
Yeah, I felt like I had a lot to say, and that was true in LA. But the move was sort of like, all right, like who am I going to be in Amsterdam, and what is the best version of myself that I can be there? And I could have done that in LA too, to be honest. But I do think that there's something about change that at least allows me to change in other ways too. And so I was just like, let's go.
I love that. And I think that was so brave of you too, because it's like life was good in LA. from what it, I mean, from what I looked like. Life was good in LA.
No, I was having a great time in LA. Like, LA is a wonderful city. I'm so happy that I got to live here. I moved here after business school. I had been living in the Bay. I'm originally from New York City. And so it was my first time really living in LA. Of course, there was the pandemic, so things were a little bit funky, but I think California was amazing in that there's so much nature. You can go outside even when everything was really bleak. So I really enjoyed and loved living in LA during that time. But sometimes you've got to make a bold move, even when everything is going well.
Yeah. So was it just that you're like, I'm ready to shake things up a little? Or did the Amsterdam opportunity come to you? Or were you like, I want to have an experience in my like 20s and 30s, like living abroad?
Yeah, I had lived abroad a few times. In high school, I lived in France for a little bit. In college, I lived in Paris for a year. And when I was working at Google and YouTube, I saw a bunch of friends go on rotational programs, and it just never ended up working out for me. So I just had it in the top of my mind that I did want to work abroad at some point. And when I got to my job at Netflix, I knew that there were rotations abroad. I had known people who had gone to Singapore, who had gone to India, who had gone to Amsterdam and other places. And so immediately when I started, I said, I would love to go abroad, which is
let it be known.
Let it be known. Sometimes you just have to tell people because you know it's not going to happen right then. I knew it was going to take probably at least a year, but I did want people to know that I was serious and that I really cared about being abroad. And so when the opportunity did come up, one, everyone knew that I wanted it. And two, I had real reasons to go. I had lived in Europe before. I had studied African literature and I would be working on African content. So it sort of all made sense. But also I had told people for a year that I wanted to go. And all the
planting the seed.
So the seeds blossomed and the opportunity came and it was like, well, we have to do this.
I love that. And I love what you said too about like, it's so good, I think, like when you're starting a new job or something to like set your boundaries early on or set your intentions early on so it doesn't feel like this huge shock later. It actually, I feel like, and maybe you can speak to this at Netflix, like allows you to like relax into it more because people are clear with like where you want to go
for
or
sure.
what you want to do.
I think that's true. You need to do a good job in your day job too, right? You can't just be like, I want to do this other thing.
Send me to Amsterdam.
You have to be thoughtful.
You have to show up as well.
You have to show up as well.
Of course, yeah.
So I did a good job and they thought that I would do well when I went abroad. But I do think, and sometimes it can be scary to say that you want to do something that's not on your team. I think especially in a corporate job, you're not sure like, will your manager be upset about it? So like be thoughtful about who you're telling and when. But I do think that setting that intention is important. And it does help people to know what you want. Like people can't really help you if you don't tell them what it is that you want.
Yeah, that's so true. And I feel like vocalizing it to ourselves first and foremost, and then to others, like allows them to come in. And well, before we get too into it, we'll have our 3 breaths to ground in the intention of what sounds like, taking bold action, taking big swings, embracing change. So everyone, if you can just close your eyes for a second, now that we've gotten our listeners' ears nice and warm with Tamar's amazing voice, taking a deep breath in, breathing in what you might be ready to mix up, to call forth, to invite change into in your life, and exhaling that out. And then another breath in to breathe in the presence, the wisdom of this podcast, of whatever conversation is meant to be had to maybe be your sign to spark, to take action, and exhaling that out. And then third and deepest breath in to breathe in the trust that whatever is changing or has changed is leading you to exactly where you're meant to be, exactly who you're meant to become, and exhaling that out. Amazing. Okay, so now that we've all just gotten to kind of sink in together, thanks for really breathing with me. I appreciate that.
I always really breathe with you. I actually love that. I know if I'm coming to an event of yours, or if I'm doing something with you, like we will be grounded in intention. I love that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm like, never underestimate the power of a collective breath. But with that change, kind of circling back to Amsterdam, can you kind of like recount like what it was like a big change like that can sound so exciting to people, but especially when you already do have community and whatnot in LA, like what the initial like few weeks, few months were like there, and like how you were settling in and how that kind of also helped you find your corporate baddie TikTok voice, which you guys all have to check out on TikTok.
Yes, please check it
and
out.
hopefully Instagram soon too.
Yeah.
Let's get it to the millennials.
Let's get it to everyone. Exactly. It's an interesting feeling to put out into the universe what you want, to kind of wait for it to blossom for a year until the opportunity comes. And then you're at this moment where you got what you wanted.
Right.
And now you have to do it.
Right. Because it's been a year.
Yeah. And then what comes, at least for me, is extreme fear. What if I ruin this? What if I'm bad at my job? What if I don't make any friends? The sort of spiral of, I took this bold move. I asked for this. And now I actually have to do it. There were a few things that happened before I moved in when I got there. First, I actually asked almost everyone that I knew if they knew anyone in Amsterdam.
Oh, I think you asked me that.
Yeah,
did you meet up with anyone I connected you to? Oh, I think I connected
that
Adu's friend.
I don't think that we ended up meeting up, but I think I texted like someone that you told me about.
Okay, halfway.
But I will say, I made a lot of friends from that.
Yeah,
even
smart.
Like
asking for help, just
asking
like
for help again.
Yeah,
I was like on Instagram DM, like, or Instagram stories, being like, anyone know anyone that lives in Amsterdam? And some of those people that I met in like the first 2 weeks of moving are still like my good friends today, and I can stay at their house when I'm in Amsterdam, and if they come to visit LA, they can stay at mine. So I think that was really important to just ask people, like, give me this random acquaintance that you know. And then what's really interesting was that a lot of people had really good friends that lived in Amsterdam, which felt very random.
I know, it's not like London or
I know,
but
like Uber is there, and like people had moved to startups, people had gone to business school abroad. So I was even surprised by how far my network reached out. And I think if I hadn't asked, like, no one would have told me, right? So that was number one. Two, I definitely had some major meltdowns. I remember being on a phone call with a friend, and I think I was being a little snarky, to be honest. And then he asked me,
snarky.
I know,
like, you're an angel.
I was really nervous, and he asked me what was wrong, and I burst into tears. And I think that sometimes you just gotta cry it out.
Yeah.
Just be ready for those feelings that come of like, you can be doing something bold and exciting and that you've always wanted to do, and you can also be scared. Those two things can happen at the same time. And don't resist the fact that you're scared or feeling nervous, like, but own it. Because what was happening was I was trying to pretend it wasn't happening.
Like, everything's great. Everything's great.
And then I was like not being nice to people that I loved. So I apologize to you, Nick.
Nick, if you're listening. Tamar is sorry. But I love that so much. And I love that too, because we both have done improv. And in improv, they're so big with the yes and. But I love talking about it in the self-development sense of like, yes, and allowing two emotions to be true at the same time. Like you said, it's like you can be excited and you can also be scared and nervous. And it's like creating space and allowance for both, and like actually allowing yourself to feel the sadness or the nervousness instead of trying to suppress it actually, ironically and paradoxically, allows us to process it much faster than when we try to like swallow it or suppress it.
Exactly. And I think maybe at that time I didn't even realize that a big change like that would make me so nervous. And I think sometimes you just have to like go through it to learn about yourself, what emotions you might be going through when a big change happens. So I think if I were to move somewhere else now, I would know, girl, you're going to be nervous. Lean into it in a way that I couldn't have warned myself about that before.
And so do you feel like a lot of like the enjoyment, the sinking into Amsterdam came when you started to like give yourself more like permission to cry and just like express and be like, what was like the kind of shift after that?
Yeah. So once I actually moved, I think one was taking action, even though I was nervous. And I think that's something else that comes up for me a lot. Like, even if you are scared or you're taking a bold leap, like, you still need to do things through that. So for me, that meant hitting up my friends' friends who I had never met, saying, do you want to come have brunch at my house? And then taking that as an opportunity to make a TikTok. You know what I mean? And being like, this is how you make friends when you move to a new city. And they were so lovely, so gracious. And it was interesting because a lot of them, there's lots of expats in Amsterdam. And so the women that I had invited, they were American and British, and they did not know each other. And they were like, ooh, we should know each other. And so it was also funny to end
You were
up being a
connecting them.
connector.
Oh my gosh.
And I had just moved there for the first time. So
You're like, am I amazing? No, I'm joking. But you are.
I love you. It was, and I think you don't even realize, I think, the power that you have moving to a new space, because it's interesting for friends of friends to meet you, and you can actually be a connector. And I just didn't even realize like the sort of value that would bring to other people, because I was just so nervous about having zero friends in this new city. So there was that. I think there was also learning how to ask for help in a new place. In Amsterdam, pretty much everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
So it feels like this is going to be easy. And then I got COVID the first like 3 weeks I was there. And I was like, I don't know how to order anything. How do I get groceries? Who should I even tell that I'm sick?
Yeah.
Who can help me? And I spent 3 days like very sick in bed. And in Amsterdam, you had to tell like the government that you had COVID by law or whatever. So I was like reading it and I was like, okay, I need to go tell them, which
Tell
meant
the government.
I mean, like you had to
Tell
go
the
to
Netherlands.
Tell the Netherlands. So you had to go to you had to get tested at like some real place. But I was like, well, I can't take an Uber there. And everyone in Amsterdam gets around on bikes. So I was like, oh my God, I'm incredibly sick and I need to bike through the streets of Amsterdam to go to this place to get tested, to tell the government that I'm sick so I don't get kicked out of this country. So I was very sad. And when I went back to work, my manager was like, I would have come to give you soup.
Oh.
I would have helped you. And sort of everyone that I told said that. So I think that there was also, and that was like, I would say a failure on my part, like not believing that people would be helpful.
Like willing to help.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to suffer alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was another big learning. So I think it's like learning through action and then sort of learning through inaction / failure.
I love those lessons. It's so real. And yeah, like that one kind of like, we don't have to do it all.
Right.
And we don't have to like suffer in silence. And then the first one too, of like in asking for help or asking friends to introduce you to people, it's like by making a TikTok about it and then bringing the other people together, like literally by being the catalyst of like, which is what we always say at More of That, like creating what you crave. You ended up being a resource for people on TikTok and literally connecting other people IRL too.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like what our biggest like fear or pain point is when we take action on it. It can actually be our biggest gift to other people.
Right. And you don't even know the way that you show up will help other people to feel good or to make a connection or to feel valued.
Yeah. And I feel like I enjoyed so much of your content during those Amsterdam days. Well, because I feel like you hosted so many brunches and stuff at your house. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like a socialite over there, a Dutch socialite.
I turned into a Dutch socialite now. That's a joke. I speak zero Dutch because I actually did try to take some lessons, but everyone speaks perfect English. So I was like, this is actually a waste of time. But yeah, I was like, I can host things. I can go out and meet new people. Like I don't have to be alone. And even on the days where I am alone, I'm in a new city. What are some of the things I want to do? I got a museum card. I went to like lots of different museums around the city. And I think I was also
You went to Oktoberfest?
I went to Oktoberfest. I was going to say I traveled so much, which was also a really good, really great TikTok fodder, I would say.
Yeah.
But it was just so easy to get around on the trains, on the planes. I had lots of friends that wanted to come visit. I had 2 friends who actually also did rotations at their jobs, one in Amsterdam and one in Oslo. So I spent a lot of time in Norway as well. Just all these things that I think for me, I was like, well, this is the first time I get to do this. I know if I were sitting in LA and a woman who like had a similar job to me or just was like around my age and was traveling the world was putting that on TikTok, like I would watch that. I think that this would be interesting.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like how I think I also got really into creating a little more content. But it's interesting sometimes to think about that. I was like, well, I have to be doing something quote unquote interesting or new or different.
Right.
And that my life in LA was not enough before I like moved to Amsterdam, which was not actually the case. But I do think that sometimes it does take that change to give you the impetus and like the feeling that it's worth it.
Totally. Yeah, and I love what you said too. And it brings me to like my next kind of topic of like what having that change, having that whole obviously like flowering of experiences and new friendships in Amsterdam, being like, oh yeah, like change is good. I'm safe to experience this. And like I've experienced the fear, but I've also experienced the excitement, the joy, the growth. Then it's like, what was your like emotional experience coming back to LA and feeling, I don't know if you felt this way, like nothing had changed and you've had this whole like world of experience. I felt like I was like, I'm just been chilling here and Tamar's back.
I mean, girl, you like got engaged.
I got engaged.
What, you like?
Well, also you bought a house.
Shout
out to Tamar for buying a house, which was also part of her TikTok.
Well,
so
also,
if you're curious.
part of the TikTok journey. Bought an apartment in Brooklyn, like in the neighborhood close to where I grew up, which was really, really lovely to be able to do.
Yeah.
Moving back to LA was harder than I thought it would be. And I think I realized from moving to Amsterdam and then moving to LA that I am over optimistic. And I love that about myself. I would love to continue the joy and the optimism that I have. But sometimes that means that I do not fully take into account how hard or difficult it might be. So yes, I had left for LA for a year. Technically not that much time. Actually came back to multiple friends in serious relationships or in engagements, which obviously was incredibly exciting, but I hadn't been there while they were necessarily getting to those more serious points. And so I felt a little bit like,
how did this happen?
One, how did this happen? But two, like, where do I fit in this? Because like, you're my friend, but now like you come with another person, which is wonderful. But am I friends with this person too? Do we have to like always do things as a three? Like, so I think that was really interesting to come back to. I had subletted my apartment in LA. So I had the same apartment when I moved back. So I was like, again, easy. I'm going to move back into the same place. But in a year, I was like, I'm kind of different. Like I lived in Amsterdam. I have a kind of a different aesthetic, a different style. I'm like going back to exactly where I was. This doesn't like fully represent me anymore. And then a third, like, kind of funny thing was in Amsterdam, you just bike. Like, the furthest bike ride is 20 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I literally have to, like, schedule time with my friends to see them because they live in Venice. Love you. Or and it's a 45-minute drive.
The closest car ride isn't even 20 minutes.
Exactly. LA. So I was, like, readjusting to what it was like to live in LA and feeling a little bit unmoored from the situations that I had been in the past. And I kind of felt like I had to reintegrate myself into that. And I think I just like wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, the reintegration.
And I probably should have, but I did not.
Well, it's interesting though, because it is something interesting to talk about because it's like when we go to a new place, of course, like the Amsterdam stuff, there's like a lot of good lessons there, but it's almost, to be expected when we're going to a new change. But we don't often talk about like when we return somewhere that we've been after we've had this like big new experience, what that's like, and how what were some of your takeaways or tools from like processing that?
It was honestly really tough, I think, at the beginning to realize like, of course, it felt like life stood still for a year and then I would come back. And of course, that's like not actually what happened. So how do it's not even rebuild a friendship. It's just like remake the friendship so that we live in the same city and we're seeing each other more or texting each other more. And I think some of the lessons there were just like, friendships are like flowers. You have to water them to grow. And it's not that my friendships like were no longer there. It's just that they had sort of been like out of the sunlight for a little bit, right? So like everyone had to put in a little bit more effort to make it come back to what it was. And I feel like my friendships are even stronger now. And I've made even new friends. And I feel like so confident and sturdy where I am. But I would say it took like 8-10 months to really feel like I was back to my LA life. And I thought I was just going to move back and my life was going to be exactly the same as it was before.
Yeah. No, and it's so true. The flower thing is like such a great analogy because I do feel like, if a friend has gone on a hiatus or like I
mean, it's true. It was like
a different continent.
Yeah, it wasn't just them. It was me too. Like I left for a year. That's like totally normal. That they wouldn't like text me all the time because I didn't live here for a year.
Yeah, but that there is this like moment of like like allowing for like the change of what the season was, but then it's like, okay, it might be a little like not awkward, but just like, it's like not just as like close as it used to be immediately. And it's like allowing for that kind of like getting to re-know each other on that deeper level again. And like you said, like having it in our radar of like, oh yeah, I'm going to text this person. And yeah, just like allowing that in your reintegration of LA.
So probably next time I would like give my friends a little more notice, like a month before, like, hey, I'm coming back. Like,
let's get ready.
Let's get dinner. Like the same way that I was when I was moving to Amsterdam. Like, oh, I want to make sure that I'm putting myself out there.
Totally.
And I think I would just do that probably going forward to anywhere that I moved, even if it's a new neighborhood. Like, remember that change is real. And it takes some time to get used to it.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And I know we'll kind of piggybacking on that from some of our like sushi date discussions of the last.
I love our sushi dates.
I love our sushi dates too. I feel like we have so many like powerful musings together. But like sushi date discussions too of like the Amsterdam thing happened. And then I know there was like a transition with like a situation coming to an end with a person. And like how did like both of those kind of like roll into kind of maybe like your current like musings of what you've learned or what you've opened up to? Because I feel like it really has been, from that outside looking in as a friend, like a renaissance period for you. Like doing your improv class, like showing up on socials, going skiing all the time. So like, how did you navigate through that as well? And like, what has that kind of like opened up from you from the inside out?
Yeah. I think one was that my expectations, I hadn't necessarily like put them out there, so people didn't know them. So I think that was one. And two, with this guy that I was dating and it didn't end up working out, I think our expectations were in different places. We both could have talked about them more.
Expectations are a zinger, let me tell you.
Like truly. And when we finally did talk about them, it just like the timing wasn't right. That left me, I think, just feeling so sad. And I feel like so many people will relate to this, but sometimes you feel like you're so sad that you'll never not be sad again.
Oh my gosh.
And that is not true.
But I know that feeling so well. And then your intellectual love is like, don't worry, we've been this sad before. We're going to get through it. I feel it every luteal phase of my period.
Exactly.
And then I start my period and I'm like, wow, feel better.
I'm back. I'm back, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah. But that was hard. And I think like some of those relationships this was also someone that I had dated before I went to Amsterdam. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna come back and it's gonna be like, we're gonna date again. And it's different from a friendship, but I do feel like it was similar in that I was like, well, we're friends like this before I left. So we're gonna be friends like this when I come back.
Right.
And again, it's what did both of you put into it? Well, like you weren't in the same place, and how do you get back to that place? And do both people want to get back to that place? And it's okay if they don't. It's okay for two people to have like different thoughts or ideas about what that relationship is going to be going forward. But I think I was feeling like, oh man, I like kind of messed up. Like I left, I made people mad at me, and it became this extrapolation of like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I made a huge mistake. Do I even have friends anymore? Again, that fear spiral, even when I was moving to Amsterdam, I was like, I'm not going to have any friends and I'm going to be bad at my job. And that spiral, it came back, but just in a different way. And I was like, totally. I have no friends, which was not true. I was like seeing my friends all the time.
Meanwhile, I'm like obsessed. I'm like, come to Venice. When are you free? But it's so funny because we think that when we're left alone with our thoughts, but it's like, yeah.
Even when you have all of the facts to show, that's not true.
I know. Like I feel that midweek, even as an extreme extrovert on Wednesdays, if I don't have a plan on Friday night, I'll be like, I am alone. And Spencer's like, I'm right here. I'm like, yeah.
Exactly. And I know. And like, again, most of your friends live in Venice. So they live right next to you.
Yeah. I know. I'm like so like
surrounded by friends, but still feeling alone. And that is something I think you just have to like, one, get through to like, I'm a big proponent of therapy.
Yes.
And talking through like, why are your feelings and why is like what you're receiving not actually matching the energy that people are giving to you?
Right.
And how do you take like the good and separate it from, what's making you feel sad and move through that. So I think that those were some good learnings, but I would say like just expectations and trying to make them like more clear from the beginning. But I think also sometimes things just don't work out, and you can be as clear as you want, and you can be in love or in or whatever the situation is, and it doesn't work. And just like having some more acceptance of that is really what makes the difference.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I feel like, oh my gosh, if I could go back and tell the Meredith who went through dating before Spencer, well, even now being married. Oh my gosh. Of the expectation versus acceptance. Like, yeah, just accepting the reality of what is and not trying to fight it or wish it to be a different way. It like removes all the resistance. And then we get to reinvest all of that energy back into ourselves versus like putting energy trying to like make something work or be what it was in the past or something like that, which is crazy. Yeah. But what a powerful musing. And so like, yeah, in that, or you were kind of saying, closing the loop, that like through that like acceptance, do you feel like that's kind of like what helped get out of that feeling of sadness when you were moving through it?
It's acceptance. I think it is that I do have amazing friends who can remind me, I know you're crying, but I love you. Remember, I'm right here. And I think that's really important. Like, and I would do the same for them. I loved our sushi dates during those times. I think I like probably cried with like multiple friends, including you, during that time. And everyone
so
was
honored, by the way. When a friend cries with me, I'm like, I'm honored like, that you think
I felt
that
so
this
safe
is a
with
safe
you.
enough space.
It is. It was really safe.
Yeah.
And it was just, so many emotions. It was that and like everything about coming back. But again, there is that part of just taking action through fear and through sadness. So one of those things for me that you mentioned was setting up for an improv class, like honing my creativity and just thinking about ways to have fun outside of the norm, outside of like work. I'd been thinking about doing an improv class for a while. I live in LA.
We got to do it.
There's actors
it's
everywhere.
Like the
like,
LA starter pack. We have to, rite of passage.
So I like live in WeHo. Groundlings is right there. So
no excuse.
That exactly. Like, come on, girl. So signing up for that. I think, again, getting really into skiing. Again, one other thing that I had wanted to do for so long, but it just like it's kind of expensive. So you do need to be in a place where you have disposable income, which I was not in my early 20s.
But you worked hard, corporate baddie, made it happen.
I think it's also easier when you have a group of friends that's also interested in it, because I don't live like in a ski town. I have to drive. So
I know, but I feel like I see you on the mountain every week.
Well, now because I'm
Brogan's
going with,
or Brogan's not pictured here.
He's not here. He's off camera. But
he's off camera, but
love skiing.
Skiers in the house or snowboarders. People who love snow.
I mean, like my cousin lives in LA. She loves skiing. I have a bunch of friends so it's more just like you have people to go with you on this 2-hour drive to Big Bear or this 5-hour drive to Mammoth, and it's more fun. So like I was able to really lean into that. What are some other fun things I've done? I think just like continue to meet up with my friends, not say no to stuff just because I am sad.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you do need to take an evening off, but sometimes you should go out.
Right. And not just like sit in your thoughts and spiral. I've had a few of those thoughts like in recent weeks as well, where I was like in just like a really bad mood, and Spencer's like, let's go to this thing. This person's having a wellness day. And I'm like, I don't feel like meeting new people, especially as an extrovert, but then I like got there and there was a sauna there. So it was fine. And I started talking to someone. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I came.
Yeah.
I would have just sat at home and like just been spiraling. But it's a good reminder. And I was gonna say, with the improv class, like what came up for you in doing the Groundlings improv? Was there any like interesting like musings that you had, or just like sides of yourself that you hadn't like tapped into or accessed much before?
I think I had never done improv before. And so it was my first time in a long time trying something completely new.
Yeah.
Versus like just getting better at something that I already knew how to do.
Yeah.
So to walk in and be like, 1, I have no idea how to do this. 2, half of this class is actually actors who have acting coaches and are trying to make it. And the other half of the class is like people like me who are just like, Like there was like a couple other corporate people, some like, people in the restaurant industry. And so to not compare yourself
Mm-hmm.
to the actors.
Right.
It was like kind of hard.
Yeah. You're like, I could just be undiscovered talent, like how Hermione was discovered by Harry Potter.
If only I were 11 years old and there was some sort of
scout
for me. But I think it was really nice to not know how to do something and to start from scratch and to learn and like to have that fun while doing it, and to remember it's not everything is a competition. I grew up in a super competitive environment, like, and I played sports and, you know, went to schools and have had jobs that have been great, but also competitive to a certain extent. And I do thrive in that. It's not that I don't like it, but sometimes you just got to let it go and try something new and see what happens. And so it was really nice to have that reminder doing improv. Did you feel like that too?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it is so humbling because I like to think of myself as like a funny and witty person and a huge proponent of the yes and yeah, I love being a beginner and giving myself permission and grace. But it was funny because in my last round of improv that I did at Upright Citizens Brigade, sister school to Groundlings, or not sisters, but they're like, yeah, besties, I like to think. But yeah, anyways, my teacher was like, after the scene was like, Meredith, okay, I'll rewind and say that in the scene, I thought that I was doing a great job. And I thought that my scene partner was kind of asking or like not giving me good material to work with. So I'm like, kind of like, what are you talking about? And trying to steer it in a different direction. And then when the scene ended, my teacher was like, Meredith, you realize that you weren't really yes-anding. Because like my scene partner would be like, you don't know what you're talking. Or she'd be like, we were chickens in the scene. Like, what was the scene? But she was like, you don't really know like much about these things in the world because you're younger. And then I was like, well, I'm only 6 months younger than you, which, as you know, like in my head, I was like thinking it was a good thing. But then when my teacher said it, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I wasn't yes-anding.
Right.
Yeah, because she's like, you're much younger than me. And I'm like, I'm only 6 months younger. Like killing the scene. And so when she said it, it was like a dagger to my heart. I was like, I wasn't yes-anding. So it was like noticing funny things like that where I was like, oh, like it's a good reminder of like being more open and continuing to notice my own blind spots of like where I think I'm being open, but actually I might still be thinking I have a better idea than someone else. So that was humbling. And just giving myself grace and permission of like, and this is fun. And I don't have to beat myself up that I wasn't yes-anding that one time.
Like, oh, it wasn't perfect. Cool, next. Versus like,
I know. Versus me being like, does my teacher think I'm the worst one? I swear I'm funny.
Right.
Have you listened to my podcast?
I have proof.
I know. Do you think you would do another improv class?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Or you're doing sketch writing right now.
I'm doing a sketch writing class right now, which has been so interesting because I majored in literature in undergrad and I've always loved writing, but was like, I should make money. So I never like pursued writing. But then like doing TikToks, and that's been a sort of creative outlet, but it's so fun to, again, like learn a new craft from the ground up. Like I've never taken a sort of like sketch writing class or a script writing class of any sort. So that's been really cool. And then for the improv class, I actually really want to take the second level at the Groundlings, but it doesn't really work with my schedule. There's a lot of like 10 a.m. Wednesday classes. And I'm like, okay, that works for
again,
like
actors
or
people
who's like trying to be an actor.
A lot of us in Venice. Like we set our own schedule.
But again, for the corporate baddies of the world, I need a 7 p.m.
Do you hear that, Groundlings? Make improv more friendly to corporate baddies.
Bring back the 7 p.m. class.
I know. Oh my God, it's so real. And not a hard circle back, but in a hard pivot, just because I think it's interesting for the millennials and also like about taking big swings and betting on yourself in all of these different ways. I do want to circle back to the home ownership. A, because I'm curious personally, and B, it's so inspiring because you bought your house when you were 30.
Yeah.
And I know you did a whole TikTok and you were interviewed on the news about it.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wow, look at this millennial who's so financially responsible. But yeah, how did that come to be when you were like knowing that you were wanting to buy a house and like how you kind of like had the long-term game to like prep for it?
Yeah. There are a few things. I think one is like I've always known that I wanted to own something. I wasn't sure there was going to be a house. I kind of had two ideas at the time, or maybe in my late 20s, like after I had graduated from business school and I was working in media, I was like, okay, I would love to buy an apartment or potentially create like a studio. And so that's still top of mind for me one day, but like to have a studio, to potentially have an incubator for creatives of some sort, where people can rent out space. Like, I think that would be so interesting. So this was like a business idea. But I was like, whoa, that's going to take a lot of time to run and operate.
Right.
Potentially not like a side hustle. And then I also like was interested in buying a house. So I kind of like had a good amount of savings. I also worked at tech companies my whole career, which was, I think, very helpful, and ended up and had like, stock from my days of working. So it was 2022 and I was like, I'm turning 30. What am I going to give myself? Because I'm not getting married. I'm not having a baby. And those things are things that I want. But I think like for people around 30, or for women that I know around 30, those were maybe some of the big milestones that they were having. So like, that's what they were spending
their money on,
their savings on. But I was like, well, I don't have that, but I want to celebrate myself. Maybe we should just buy an apartment.
Yeah, I love that. What a fucking milestone to be so proud of at 30, to be like, yeah.
So, yeah, my good friend in Brooklyn had bought an apartment and then a bigger house from a real estate broker, and he was really great. His name was Grant, and so she put me in touch with him. He works with lots of first time homeowners, and so I was living in Amsterdam, and I was like, listen, I'm trying to like buy an apartment. I think like now is the right time. So he actually went with my mom to a bunch of open houses.
I love that your mom was taking stock for you.
And they videos. Sent videos. They would FaceTime me if the timing was right. And then there was one apartment there. They're like, we think this is the best one. It has some outdoor space. And like for the price range, like this is probably it. I was not going to be able to like come back and see it. So I was like, I'm Grant and Mom. My faith is in you. Full trust. Like, I'm going to send this down payment and put it on escrow. This is the most money I've ever sent in my entire life to like one other account. Had a great lawyer too that Grant had recommended. And so the process happened. And then I came back for the closing in August and like signed the papers and was like, oh my God, I have the keys in my hand.
Wow.
I'm a homeowner. This is lit. I should make a TikTok about it. And then, that went viral. And then a reporter from CNBC saw it and DM'd me on Instagram. Was like, can I interview you?
And you're like, why, yes, you can.
It was such a millennial story.
Yeah.
But I just think,
like, there is hope for us after all.
There is hope. I think there definitely is hope. And like, there are definitely ways that you can buy an apartment without, or a house without like having to put down 20%. And there are like programs that you can do that give you a break on what the normal interest rate would be. Like, there are ways to do it. I think you have to be savvy, and I didn't even do all of those things.
What was your biggest like learning or takeaway that you like got from the whole process?
One, ask for people for help. I feel like that's a
common thread line. We love a common through line in a pod.
Yes.
Ask for help.
And then like, there are so many documents when you are buying a house.
I can imagine.
Read them all. And it's not even like, oh, like now I know what every single thing means, but I could just ask questions that made me feel comfortable buying the apartment. And I think like probably a lot of people do, but also probably a lot of people don't read everything. And so it was just like really nice to be able to have those conversations and to ask those like more nitty gritty questions. But also I think it's just like, if you want to do it, it takes a long time. So not like read everything, do some research, but also know that from the time that you want to buy to the time you end up closing, it's going to be months.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What an adult thing. So proud of you. Well, and that kind of brings me to like the larger like question of like, what is the future of corporate baddie? Like, what makes a corporate baddie in your opinion, like outside of your own TikTok? Like, what defines a corporate baddie, and like, be like, what is the future of corporate baddie? Like, what do you hope that people get from it?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah.
I think a corporate baddie is someone who like is working and is trying to do their absolute best while in the job, but also make sure that they are at their absolute best on the inside while giving to that job. And so I think like the baddie moniker is like, she's a bad bitch, you know, like I love that too. But it's also, it's like, yeah, you can look good, but what does that mean to you? You can feel good. What does that mean to you? You can do well at your job. How are you making sure that you're showing up in a way that will allow you to do as well as you can? So that's like the corporate baddie ethos.
Right.
And some of that comes from like making lattes at work or from getting ready.
You got like viral Netflix by the way, everyone. You guys viral Netflix TikToks on corporate baddie of like, here's what I have for snacks, or here's me making a latte. People just want to know what they're fueling the people at Netflix with behind closed doors.
So funny. So yeah, there's fun things like that and there's silly things, but I think it's like you can be a serious corporate woman and you can have fun.
Yes.
And those two things, again, like I think it's like I live in a world of dualities. Like you can be excited and scared. You can wear makeup and be really good at Excel. Like all of those things can be true together, and name any other duality you want. And I think that's what corporate baddie represents for me, and I hope for other people. Yes, and improv coming back.
Coming full circle.
And then I think the future, like I do want to honestly put out more content, be more consistent. And I think just like give more to people who are asking for it and who want to see corporate baddies like show up in their life, whether it's me, whether it's like sketches potentially coming soon as a result of the sketch writing class.
I love it.
I just want to do more with that. I think something else that I'm really interested in is outside of the content, like creating a community of like corporate baddies, but really like women who are interested in business, who again, like just want to show up as their best selves and be serious at work, but not take themselves too seriously. And there are some communities for women who are in business, but I feel like a lot of them can be very like
masculine energy,
very serious. And like, that's great. There's room for that. I am that too. But what does it look like to just have fun with those women? So I think lots more like community building is something I'm interested in. And then helping other people incubate whatever their content idea is. So that's sort of still like the creative studio. I ended up buying the apartment, but like definitely studio stuff is top of mind for me, and being an incubator, and also just having like a community for corporate women.
I love that. I love so much about the yes and the duality and like the soft power, I like to call it, or like the energetics of feminine leadership, where it's like you can have both. It doesn't have to be super one or super the other, but actually by living in the duality, we create the most fertile soil for our growth and make ourselves like feel the most expressed as a multidimensional human being, not just like put in one box or the other. And that's something I've really like admired about you since the beginning of our friendship time, of like you working a corporate job and also like taking time for your creativity and like doing the things that you know are going to light you up outside of that, and like taking these big swings and risks in all areas of life. And like documenting it along the way. I love that corporate baddie TikTok is everything from, like the Netflix snacks to buying your house to like your egg freezing journey, like some like vulnerable personal stuff to like get ready for me as I go to work, to like hot takes on the LA dating scene.
Right. Because all of that is me. It's all true.
It's all true. Amazing. I love it. Okay, so as we wind down, I could talk to you forever, but maybe we'll have a corporate baddie podcast coming soon.
Ooh.
Watch this space. I'll give you 2 questions, and you can kind of answer one of them, and then we'll go into our little wind down of our powerful arc today. So the 2 questions are, what is a treasured trigger for you? Like something that did trigger you, but you've like learned from or grown from, or now the trigger brings wisdom instead of agitation. Although like I have so many of those, too many to count. Or like, what is some powerful stuff for you right now? Like a powerful reminder, mantra, wisdom that you've kind of really been feeling lately. You could answer either or both.
Actually, I have an answer for both.
Okay, I love it. Yes.
I'll start with the mantra because it's quick. I don't even remember where I saw this, but somewhere I saw that you should remind yourself like what your future you needs to do the things that you don't really want to do today. And so I wrote a Post-it. It says, what does future Tamar need from you today? And it's on my mirror in my bathroom. And every morning I wake up and go brush my teeth and see that. And I'm like, okay, I need to work on this deck today. I need to do my taxes today, or I want to make sure that I work out today because it'll be the 4th time this week working out. And that's like part of my mantra. And I want to make sure that 80-year-old Tamar can still walk. Like it goes from things that are short term to long term. And it helps me to focus on just one thing that I can do today that some version of my future self would appreciate. And I've loved like thinking about that. So that's sort of like the mantra that's top of mind.
That's beautiful.
And then a treasured trigger for me, which I loved that question when I heard it.
I know. Like triggers
I
or
also have a
treasures.
few.
Let's hear it.
In school, in business school, I was complaining about a friend of mine because we were like really going through it and she was really annoying me. Okay. But I talked about it a lot. And as another good friend, and she's told me, I think it was probably like 2 months, and she was like, I just want to stop you because you've been talking about this situation to me for a really long time, and I feel like you haven't done anything to change it, and I'm kind of tired of hearing about it if you're not going to do anything.
Yes, we need those friends.
The dagger in my heart.
Wow.
I was like, my first thought was like, she hates me. We're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Which is not what she said at all. But that's
like, I love you, but let's get the move on.
Yeah.
You're like, I feel seen and attacked.
Right. No, I mean, yeah. Well, first I just only felt attacked, which was not fair. But then, yeah, to think about it, I was like, you're right. I am not standing in my power right now. Like I'm kind of letting this person do what they want. And I'm not even expressing what it is that I want. And 2, I'm like entering the same situation over and over again and not doing anything different. And so it was a reminder in that situation. But I think also, I think about that for other life situations of I am actually in control of myself. I'm not in control of other people, but I do not have to go to that place. I do not have to talk to this person. I do not have to read this email. I can make more decisions that will make me happy, and I'm not at the whim of someone else. And that was actually a really important, like powerful reminder to have.
I love that. It's so stoic, like in the sense of like, what am I in control of?
Yeah.
And like, I am in control of how much energy I give this.
Right.
This thing is like, to go back to the acceptance thing, like it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can either give it fuel by continuing to dwell on it, or I can reinvest that energy back in me and other things. And
Exactly.
I get to choose where I put that energy. I love that. It reminds me of this quote that I once heard that I come back to all the time of a true queen rules herself and serves others.
Oh, I love that.
Versus ruling others and serving herself. Mm-hmm. And it's like ruling ourselves, I feel like, yeah, to mean kind of like understanding, doing the work on ourselves, whether it's therapy, journaling, whatever, sitting with ourselves to unpack and sit with and process our emotions so then we can show up and serve more fully versus, yeah.
I'm obsessed with that. I'm going to write that and put it on my mirror.
Oh my God, I'm honored that we're getting some real estate on the
There's
on
like
the
lots of
corporate
Post-its
baddie
on the mirror, but that will be added.
Oh my God, honored. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up with our little meditation, and then we'll ping pong some questions back for the listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so if everyone wants to close their eyes, taking another deep breath in and exhaling it out. And as you start to turn your gaze inward and make your breath more slow and spacious, starting to call to mind something that you are ready to shift into, maybe change into in a big way. And just allowing that big shift or that big leap to bring up the excitement that comes with the prospect of what could be on the other side of this big shift. And also allowing at the same time the fear or the anxiety or the grief that comes with that change. And breathing space into both, breathing in the yes of the excitement and exhaling the and of fear. Breathing in the yes of this change. And breathing in the and of the acceptance, the allowance of other parts of you to still remain. As you take these next few breaths, allowing yourself to create space or the invitation for both the change, both the remaining the same, for this duality to exist at the same time. Breathing in the yes, and exhaling the and. And as you create more spaciousness, asking your highest self on the other side of this change, what becomes possible when you allow space for both? Whether it's both sides of this change, or maybe just both aspects or different aspects of you to exist at the same time. Trusting whatever your highest self says to you. And almost like you're looking at them in your mind's eye in a mirror, just noticing their vitality, their vibrance of allowing all sides of them, all sides of you to be seen and expressed and felt in this moment. And with that, just breathing in one more yes, exhaling one more and slowly coming back to this room, opening your eyes when you're ready. And we'll just end with a few questions for our listeners. I feel like, a great theme was the taking big action and allowing for the duality. So my first question would be, what different sides of yourself would you like to coexist at the same time? Or maybe have you not allowed to coexist? And what becomes possible when you allow them to exist at the same time? What uniqueness do you call forth? What possibility do you create? And then do you have a question too you'd like to give our loyal listeners?
Yes, I would love to. My question for you is, what do you think of that scares you right now? And is there a way that you can get closer to that goal or plant the seeds so that it might come to fruition, even if it's not tomorrow, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years?
I love that, taking little baby steps. And then third one, because last but not least, I love the other sub-theme in today's podcast of acceptance. And so with whatever big change or whatever duality, or maybe it's just a feeling that you're feeling this week, what feeling can you, or situation can you give yourself acceptance around that maybe you've been resisting or suppressing? Whether it's a situation or feeling, what can you bring acceptance to? And what energy does that allow you to invest in something else once you give that situation acceptance? Do you have any final ones?
No, I like that one. That's a really good ending one.
Okay, love it. Well, Tamar, thank you so much for being on and blessing powerful stuff with your corporate baddie ways.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you've gone to Amsterdam and come back to tell the tale. I'm so glad we made this happen. This will be the first of many. Watch this space. And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next week for more powerful stuff.